Welcome to the latest episode of The Independent. I'm Pete Sampson in Atlanta, joined by my co-hosts, Matt Fortuna in Chicago and Tim Murray in Las Vegas. And this podcast will be entirely devoted to whether Notre Dame can answer the prayer of Shane Gillis or not and deliver a national championship on Monday night. I don't know how you guys feel, but I'm still getting used to Notre Dame having sort of a cool vibe about it in the Shane Gillis mold. I'm just still getting used to it. I don't know how you guys feel about that.
The combination of Shane Gillis, all these other people coming out and supporting them, and then let's face it, I said this on the last show. I don't know anyone outside the state of Ohio who cares for Ohio State. It's just by its very nature, and I don't mean this personally, but it's not. They're always wearing the red hat, no pun intended, right? I've been at bars where Ohio State games are on and everyone's rooting against them. They just, when you're the bully on the block in the Big Ten, I just think that's kind of what, the treatment you get. And the combination of that, having Marcus Freeman as your head coach, an aw shucks quarterback like Riley Leonard, and then of course, all the other sentiment going around. And your colleague Ralph Russo wrote this, and this was when there were 4 A teams left. It was Notre Dame might be the most likable team left in this playoff field. And, from a general stereotype perspective, you're not getting any argument from me here.
Last night we had, I was watching the Peacock documentary, the most recent episode, and I'm sitting there next to my wife, and it was, I think, right before they went to Mass before the Indiana game, and Marcus Freeman's up there wearing his shirt and tie, and I look at my wife, I'm like, that dude can fill out a button down. And she's like, yeah, he can. I'm like, easy. All right, easy here.
This was what I said on the last show with mine. She's like,
it's incredible.
He seems so nice. I'm like, yeah, nice.
Yeah. So, no, it's, we've talked about it a lot, but yeah, it certainly does feel like, have Michigan fans on your side is a pretty unique circumstance, certainly for Notre Dame right now.
Definitely is a hell hath frozen over type of moment in college sports that Notre Dame is America's team all of a sudden. I'm down here in Atlanta covering Notre Dame. We had media day today, Ohio State and Notre Dame with, some ESPN talent mixed in, but spent some time with Charles Jagasaw, surefire starter at left tackle on Monday night. That's sort of the news here. Talked to Jeremiyah Love a little bit. He said he's 100% healthy. And then I think overall, Notre Dame is banged up and they're down, I think, 6 starters on Monday night. This is still a much healthier team than the one that took on Penn State about a week and a half ago. Probably healthier than the one that took on Georgia 2.5 weeks ago. So I do feel like Notre Dame is in a position to at least kind of take their best reasonable shot on Monday night, which is frankly what it's going to take.
There's nothing about Rocco, right? As far as any hesitation, I just assumed all along he'd be playing.
Yeah, and that's to me, if you're going to start Jagasaw at left tackle, that only can mean that Spindler is healthy at right guard. And that certainly seems to be the case. He was, Spindler was moving around at media day just fine. Bo Collins said he was healthy. I think they're about as healthy as they possibly can be going into Monday night, and they will need every bit of that against Ohio State.
Yeah, and I think too, when you look at kind of the wide receivers too, guys, where Jaden Greathouse coming off of his best game at Notre Dame, Jordan Faison was the go-to guy against Georgia, and then Aeneas Williams, I've been talking about it from a betting standpoint all week. His player prop for receiving yards just keeps on rising. It's I think 25.5. So you kind of get a sense, and Mitch Evans also had 5 receptions for 50+ yards against Penn State. So it does kind of feel like, even though, like you mentioned, Pete, you're going to need everything to come together for this offense. We know about the run game. We know about Jeremiyah Love, and Riley Leonard, but it feels like there's 4 pass catchers that have kind of emerged lately that okay, those are going to be guys that it seems like this offense is going to try to get involved rather regularly against Ohio State.
You could throw Love in there too if he's healthy, and it looked like he wasn't even wearing a brace during the open media viewing of practice today. So I think that definitely bodes well for them. Pete, I'm curious just down there, and I know a lot of people who aren't going down till Sunday night or Monday morning, but what is like the vibe just walking? Everything there is very condensed as far as the stadium, the hotels, the team hotels. Like these are probably the two biggest fan bases in the country. These two in Michigan. I mean, what's the split? What's the atmosphere? I know you got stopped by was it a groupie in the street today?
Yes,
wearing an independent shirt.
Nobody stops Pete Sampson in the street quite like middle-aged men. But he had a independent quarter zip on, I think.
There we go.
Clearly a friend of the show, which I appreciate. A couple of my colleagues were like, "What is that about? Do people do this all the time?" Yes.
Jealous.
Yeah, I mean, look, that's just how it is.
I've got my independent shirt. I don't have it on right now.
This is the life I've chosen. But I think it's kind of, I don't think I could give you an honest answer of like the vibe around here. I know that one of my colleagues, Stu Mandel, was flying out for San Francisco and struck by like how many Notre Dame fans were on his plane from the West Coast. I had a friend fly down to Atlanta from Chicago today and was just like, "Whoa, man, there's a lot of Notre Dame people on this plane." My hunch is that Notre Dame will outnumber Ohio State in the Mercedes-Benz Dome on Monday night, but I don't think it's going to be much more than like a 55-45 type of split. But I am interested sort of tomorrow and then, just walking around downtown on Monday, like what it's like. I think that will be sort of the telltale sign. Because I would imagine that, and I'm talking to Notre Dame fans, a lot of them showed up today. And I think they'll probably be out in force tomorrow, maybe tonight. After we record this podcast, I'll do a very unscientific poll walking around downtown Atlanta. Probably not. But tomorrow I'll get a better feel for that.
I heard Magic City might be a good place to go. You should go check
wing.
that out.
I heard they have excellent wings. Is that true?
That's what I've heard.
Okay.
James Harden likes it.
All right.
No, Lou Williams.
That was Lou Williams. That's right.
It was Lou Williams. He almost canceled the NBA season because he had to get those wings. And the Athletic, I think, did like a first person. Wow, these wings are really good. Follow up story to that. The wings, I'm sure they went for. What? Just being around media day, I'm not sure if you're at both Ohio State and Notre Dame, Pete, but what? And I hate to use the word vibes because everyone's positive and relaxed when Kirk Herbstreit's dog's there, and there are all these other cameras there and whatnot. But like, what? Did you get a sense Notre Dame was just excited to be here? Did you get a sense they were? It seemed like Marcus Freeman, every playoff interview has been like strictly business, and it felt like today he not let loose, but enjoyed the moment a little bit more.
Yeah, I think that the James Laurinaitis story kind of like is loose for him, and I don't think he can sort of be inauthentic about how that relationship has been important to him. Definitely not a just happy to be here vibe from Notre Dame. Nor were they asked questions in the way that they have been asked questions in previous Alabama Clemson games in the playoff, where it's just like, so you're going to get your guts ripped out. How do you feel about that? This team is amazing. Like, I don't think Notre Dame, even though they are the underdog, they don't come into this game feeling like one. I think it would be very cheap, frankly, if Notre Dame got up there and was like, nobody believes we can do this. Or it's like us against the world. Like, that's Ohio State's cliche line. So I think Notre Dame comes into this thinking like, not only do they belong, but they expect to win the game. And I didn't get really any sense. I talked to Jeremiyah Love, and then spent a bunch of time with athletic director Pete Bavacqua today, and also Charles Jagasaw. I want to just sort of check in with Boubacar Traore about his rehab from ACL, but there wasn't really anything about Notre Dame that would make you think like this is the underdog in this game. And I would also say, like, being around Ohio State this morning, there wasn't much about them that gave off the vibe of like, we're a prohibitive favorite either. And on top of that, I would say, like, look, that I've covered plenty of media days and bowl situations where you just sort of like look at both teams in a sweatsuit situation and think like, well, one team's way better than the other. I didn't really get that sense this morning either. So I would think Notre Dame to me has like earned the right to be confident going into this game. I think the correct team is favored, but I don't think Notre Dame should have any reason to come in on a Monday night and think like, God, we either have to be perfect or we have to show that we belong here. I think, and maybe some of that is just like the afterglow of beating Georgia and Penn State back to back. Like, I think that's sort of where that earned confidence comes into play if you're Notre Dame.
Yeah, that's kind of the way I'm looking at it. And yeah, they are an 8-point underdog. To put it in a perspective, right? Right now we're recording this on Saturday night. Washington and Detroit are playing in the NFL. That was an 8-point spread too. I don't know how the game's going to play out, but Washington is very live in that game. And Houston was, a 9.5-point underdog at Kansas City, and it didn't feel like it was a massive mismatch. So I like to kind of put it in perspective that way. But what is interesting, guys, is when you look at Ohio State's run to this spot, they were a 7.5-point favorite against Tennessee. They were around a 3.5-point favorite against Oregon, and then a 6-point favorite against Texas. So believe it or not, the championship game is the biggest spread for Ohio State throughout their playoff run. Now, it's worth noting that they have covered all of those spreads, and they have been, increased throughout. So it's not saying that Notre Dame would be an underdog to Tennessee, but it is kind of funny to look at the road that Ohio State has taken. And from an odds perspective, this is the air quotes easiest game for Ohio State, being an 8-point favorite right now.
It's just interesting to me because I think both took two of, if not the two toughest paths to get here when you look at who they had to beat to get here. And everything you said about Ohio State is true, although if Notre Dame scores 31 points in the first half Monday, I like their chances of taking home the trophy at the end of the night. But this, I almost wonder if Ross Bjork, their athletic director, regrets telling everyone in the preseason he had a $20 million roster, because that's just like anytime they do anything, it's like, well, they have a $20 million roster. What do you expect? And no one else will divulge what they're paying their players. But they do have a $20 million roster, and we've seen them at their best in this postseason. Like, no one can beat them if they're playing their best game. Now, if it was that simple, they would have done it every game and they would have been undefeated, and that's not the case. So, I mean, there are certainly ways to get these guys. But I do think the path they took here, the path Notre Dame took here, certainly adds to the confidence levels of both teams, and probably a little bit more so for Notre Dame because they did close as an underdog against Penn State. And this is Notre Dame's not first time here as a program, but it's the first time getting here the way they have and exercising those big bowl game demons by beating Georgia and coming back against Penn State. Like, there's no reason Notre Dame should come into this game thinking it's us against the world, or we can't and won't win this game. In fact, they've won these games by thinking they can and will win these games. And I think they probably go into Monday feeling the same way.
Yeah. And I mean, they come here with a pretty clear blueprint of what it's going to take to win. And they've won so many games this season by following it. Some by blowout against lesser teams, but often, whether it's like USC or certainly Georgia, less so Penn State, or certainly the second half against Penn State is just like, they're the more physical team, and they're comfortable playing these kinds of tight games over the last 3 of the last 4. And I'm very interested to sort of see on Monday night, like if Notre Dame, if it's 17-13 in the third quarter, doesn't matter who's winning, but just if it's 17-13, whether Notre Dame's up 4 or down 4, I would like Notre Dame to win that game. I don't know how Ohio State's going to respond if Notre Dame hangs around in a uncomfortable way. Because as much as I think Notre Dame is built to win a game like that, I'm not sure I can look at Ohio State and say the same thing.
Yeah, and to kind of echo your guys' sentiment, I was, just thinking about this the other day, where this is so different from 2012 and 18 and 20. And when you think about it, they were a double-digit dog in all of those games. In 2020, what was the point spread? Like 17? And
Alabama
Notre Dame.
Yeah, Alabama was the largest point spread in college football playoff history.
I think it was
long history, but still.
And, and Notre Dame, got the backdoor cover, and Brian Kelly didn't go for 2 and all of that. Like, this is not that. And, this is a team that was a favorite against the SEC champion, albeit, yeah, they didn't have their starting quarterback, but there were plenty of people, including yours truly, that thought, I've seen this before, and this is going to be a loss. And they won the game, right? And Penn State, you're down 10-0. And I think when I think back to the Penn State game, guys, and I know, Steve Angeli comes in and, he's throwing some good passes, and Abdul Carter, because of the shoulder, can't fall on the fumble. But that drive, 16 plays, 90 yards, 7-8 minutes from Penn State. I was sitting there in the stands going, well, it was a good season, hell of a year. You won the Sugar Bowl, and, it just wasn't meant to be. And then you get that field goal, and then the first drive out of the half, you're like, oh, okay, maybe not, and this team, whether they win or not on Monday night, it's just, this team's so different than maybe we've ever seen. The resiliency of this team and how they've bounced back. And, how many teams, you could play the if game, like, well, what if Haynes King was healthy? Would they have beaten Georgia Tech? I don't know, but he wasn't. And, there were plenty of moments where you think to the USC game, guys, where, it's a 7-point game and USC's driving, and lo and behold, they get a pick six. Like, it's pretty remarkable to think that this team in week 2, as we all know, lost to Northern Illinois. They had no margin for error, and they have not lost since. And, oh, by the way, bringing it to my world, also covered 11 straight games. Like, that is ridiculous. Like, absolutely insanity. 11 straight covers for this team.
It's funny. I said this on the last episode with Tony Simeone, but I think it bears repeating. I think because of that schedule and because of the way they just kind of, I don't want to say easily blew through it, but they won every game pretty decisively. There was still a question of just how good these guys are, because we saw them at their lowest and we didn't really get to see them at their best outside of week 1. And it almost had this delayed gratification feeling, I think, if you're a Notre Dame fan, that Indiana was great because it was a home playoff game, but to beat Georgia and Penn State back-to-back the way they did, it's like, holy crap, this is special. It's like hitting us now. Like, let's throw all our eggs in this basket Monday and see what's happening. To your point of, whether it would be a blowout or not. I had a story earlier this week on the Inside Zone talking to, I think, 7 coaches who either played both of these teams or studied them extensively. And you guys know how coaches can be. They're very, especially when you grant them anonymity, it's like, they got no chance, or this is the best player ever. And like, to a man, they're like, hey, Notre Dame has a chance. Like, the guys who picked Ohio State were like, I hate to do this because I love this Notre Dame team, but I think Ohio State wins in a close one, or something like that. And the thing they've got to do, and I'll read some quotes here because they can say it better than I can. Don't let the Buckeyes jump on you early. Quote, if they win the first quarter and start fast, they've just blown everybody out. Notre Dame can make it through the first 20 minutes of the game. I think it comes down to the fourth quarter and the end of the game, like Ohio State's last game. But if they start fast, if they get up on you, it's so hard to recover because their defense is so good. We'll see how those matchups work on the outside, but I think it's going to be a good game. I think it'll be closer than people think. I think it'll come down to the last 10 minutes of the game, end quote. Another scout. Unless Ohio State comes out and gets out to a 14-0 lead, I think it'll be a one-score game most of the way. I think it'll be 2014 or something like that, end quote. And there are a couple of other quotes in there. One, actually, I will add because I like it. Quote, these are still college kids who play off momentum. Anyone who says momentum isn't real is full of shit. And Notre Dame has to find 2 to 3 of those special moments. Like, oh my God, how did they make that play? Like a Jack Sawyer fumble return for a touchdown. Notre Dame has to have one of those fairy dust type of plays that people are going to be talking about 70 years from now, end quote. And I've said all along, like, I think if anyone has a chance to keep this Ohio State offense from going crazy, it's this defense in the secondary. Mm-hmm. My concern is on the offense. How do they score enough? Because Ohio State's still going to get theirs. And this is Ohio State defense that has, outside of that first Oregon game, has been absolutely phenomenal, has not had one of those big game or late game meltdowns that they had the first 2 years under Jim Knowles. And they've given up more than 17 points 2 times this year. Both times are to Oregon, who's really, really good at offense. So that's where it's going to come down to for me. Like, can Notre Dame find a way, which they've done to this point, to their credit, but can they find a way against that defense to score enough points?
And I feel like the sort of holy crap play, like, is sort of in Notre Dame's DNA at this point. Like,
right.
I would almost be more surprised if those plays didn't happen than if they did. Whether it be RJ Oben strip sack or Jaden Harrison's fumble return, or like God knows how many fakes they've had, or like multiple pick sixes against USC, or like the Christian Gray pick of Drew Aller at the very end. They've made that play too many times to look at it and be like, oh, what a coincidence. Like, this has to be the luckiest team in the world. Like, to me, there's like nothing lucky about how Notre Dame has got to this point. So I agree with those coaches. Like, you got to have a holy crap. But Notre Dame is usually like plus 2.5 in holy crap moments every week. They're not always. It's not just turnover margins. It's something more substantial than that. But Matt, like, I agree with you that for how much time has been spent on how do you guard Jeremiah Smith and Emeka Buka and Travion Henderson, like, if I'm Notre Dame, like, my much bigger concern is my own offense and how, like, Mike Denbrock is going to need 2 Penn State second halves on Monday night, I think, for Notre Dame to win.
Game.
Yeah, not just one, which he was enough against Penn State, but that's James Franklin. This is a different story.
Tom Allen, who ran away to Clemson, but that's neither here nor there.
Yeah, exactly. Maybe Jim Knowles will leave too. Who knows?
That's right.
But or Al Golden, who knows? But I would say just like Notre Dame, they have to be killers on offense, and that doesn't mean they need to score 35 points. But I think when we'll get to predictions at the end of the show, but like once you start getting factors of 3 into the score for Notre Dame, they become a lot less likely to win the game. They got to hit 3 touchdowns, and that is probably going to take the defense or special teams stepping up to create a short field to make it happen.
Well, you think about two of Ohio State's closest games of the year, Texas and Penn State. What happened at the end of both of those games? A goal line stand, right? Yeah. I mean, this is not only just an elite defense with a safety that probably would be a top 10 pick in Caleb Downs, but also elite in the red zone. So, yeah, I've been saying it all along, Pete and Matt, which is, yeah, the clear headline is Notre Dame secondary versus these wide receivers. To me, the X factor of this game is arguably the best defense in the country, Ohio State, versus this offense that no one would think is in the top echelon of offenses, right? So how does Notre Dame figure things out? You need those long, sustained drives. You need a, Georgia drive. You need, a drive that's salted away against Texas A&M. So, yeah, I think that physical nature is going to be big here for Notre Dame. And, it's funny too, and you guys can speak to this more so than I can, but like, in August when Charles Jagasaw was lost for the year, it was like, all right, well, that's probably another loss. And I know he hasn't played as started yet, but it's like, okay, they have their offensive line now, right? It was a weird way to get there, but They actually have their offensive line now. I mean, I guess Coogan wasn't the starter at center, but yeah, it's on the offense, man. It's on Riley Leonard. You can't throw that interception that he threw against Penn State. You can't throw the interception that he threw against Indiana. I don't know if he has to be perfect, guys, but the mistakes just can't be there. He didn't make a mistake against Georgia, right? And that was a game that, they win 23-10. They get a couple of those, as you mentioned, holy crap moments. And I think this game, if Notre Dame's to win, I think it kind of is similar to what Georgia was. And unfortunately for Notre Dame, it'll be a veteran quarterback, not Gunnar Stockton on the other side there. And it'll be 2 really good running backs, and it'll be really, really elite wide receivers. And Georgia clearly didn't have any of those.
A reminder to subscribe to The Independent, Apple, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts. Please subscribe to our YouTube page as well. We love interacting with our listeners all season long. And a special thank you to our friends at Obvious Shirts. You've seen the merchandise in Atlanta, in South Bend, and elsewhere. Quarter zips, crew necks, T-shirts, some of your favorite sayings. Maybe we'll have some more to distribute to you guys late Monday night. But thank you to our friends at Obvious Shirts. If you would like some independent merch, please go to obviousshirts.com.
Also, a big thank you to our friends at Roback.com. You can use the promo code Irish at Roback.com for 20% off your first order. Quarter zip shorts, T-shirts, polos, joggers, sweatshirts, crew necks, which I'm wearing right now. That's Roback.com, 20% off your first order. They have officially licensed Notre Dame apparel you can check out. And also a thank you to FutureFans.com. It's a brand that helps kids learn football, designed for kids ages 4 to 8. There's an activity box that helps your kids understand downs, football, and helps them sort of learn the game. You can go to FutureFans.com, use promo code Irish, and get 15% off the order. That's futurefans.com, promo code Irish for 15% off and help your kids fall in love with football. I guess in terms of spinning this forward a little bit, at Media Day today, Matt, you mentioned this sort of watching the, so I guess the interviews with Marcus Freeman, like he did come across as like pretty loose. I guess we'll see in the day before press conference. By the time people listen to this, that may have come and gone on Sunday if Ryan Day can avoid a verbal faux pas that James Franklin could not. But I think it just sort of get back to like Notre Dame does strike a figure of a team that is like loose and I don't want to say playing with house money, but like they come into this game like feeling pretty relaxed about like what they've got to go do on Monday night.
I wonder, and Tim mentioned, Will Howard at the end of that, at the end of when he last spoke. I'm not completely sold on this guy as like, and again, he's got a lot of cool toys to play with there on that offense, but everyone I talked to was like, Texas had their chances. They did not, like, he's late on some of these throws. Mm-hmm. Texas had their chances to pick him off more than they did, and they just didn't. I think with the secondary, there are going to be opportunities there. And then when you go back to Notre Dame's offense, I wouldn't say go full Michigan because you have much better personnel than Michigan does, but Michigan did beat these guys. And one of the coaches I talked to said, like, if you're Notre Dame, you need to know that, like, a 3-yard run on 1st and 10 is a great play against these guys. Yeah. Like, Ohio State does not have the patience to get into a game like that. Michigan held the ball for 13 minutes in the 4th quarter against them and beat them that way. And, one of the more telling parts was how one coach just described Mike Denbrock to me, which was basically like, this guy is egoless. Like, he doesn't care how he beats you. He's going to beat you how he needs to beat you. And that's been illustrated through every single week of this season, going back to the Texas A&M game. Like, the numbers are nothing to get all excited about, but they just find a way. Where's the quote here? Quote, Riley Leonard has been much better than what Notre Dame's had at quarterback. This kid's real. He's more of a leader and more calm. Mike Denbrock has probably brought a lot of that to him. He's not an up and down kind of guy. You have some guys who don't know who they are. Mike Denbrock knows exactly who he is. He's not going to try to paint a narrative where I'll show you. No, this is who I am. This is who I've always been and will continue to be. And it works for him. And look, this one's a layup, but it sounds like the opposite of Ryan Day, right? At least when Ohio State loses, like, Ryan Day gets out of character. And you would think at this point of the season, they've made it this far. Ryan Day is just going to let Chip Kelly and those receivers do their thing. But he still hasn't gotten over that hump. And I know that fan base, when they're playing one of their own. If Notre Dame wins this one, it's going to be right back to where we were November 30th for Ryan Day and his relationship with Ohio State fans, which is for a million reasons why I said the Bears should hire him as their head coach. But I just think you just don't know until you know, because again, if it was that easy for Ohio State, they would have done this every week this year.
Yeah. I mean, I'm with you on Will Howard, and, against Oregon and against Tennessee, I thought he was tremendous, but I watched that whole entire Texas game, as many of us did. And yeah, the final score was 28-14, but you're at the 1-yard line, 1st and goal from the 1 after 2 pass interference penalties in the end zone. And you're thinking this game's about to be tied, right? And the defense steps up. Sarkisian has a terrible play call on 2nd down. And now it's 28-14, and it looks a lot bigger than it was. Like, pound for pound, I think we all can agree. I would think most Notre Dame fans, even if they take off the blue and gold blinders, Ohio State's a more talented team. But I think you can make an argument Ohio State or Penn State was more talented. They had 2 healthy running backs. They had a quarterback that is a better passer in ways against Riley Leonard, certainly not the runner. They had a superstar who was banged up, but an Abdul Carter. So there were a lot of ways that team was better, and Notre Dame beat them. So it's not impossible. Like, this isn't, USA beating the Russians in 1980. Like, this isn't Northern Illinois beating Notre Dame. This isn't a 28-point spread. Hell, this isn't Michigan beating Ohio State.
Yeah, sorry.
It was a 19.5-point spread. Like, this is an 8-point spread. I'll say this. From week 0 to the last week of the regular season, a double-digit dog won every single week. Notre Dame is not a double-digit underdog. They can win this game. It's going to be hard. And, Ohio State is probably playing their best football of the year, and they've got some fun toys to play with. There's no doubt. But Yeah. I mean, look, we saw it last year, and I don't know how applicable it is, but Notre Dame should have beaten Ohio State a year ago, right?
Yeah.
And Kyle McCord played terrible in that game until he didn't, and he made that, final drive, and they score the late touchdown, all of that. But yeah, I mean, is it going to be a challenge? Of course it is. It's the national championship. But I think, the more I talk to people and I kind of think the same way from a offensive standpoint, guys, it's going to be a challenge. But I think, Matt, your point is great. Like, Mike Denbrock doesn't care. Like, he doesn't go out there and be like, all right, we have to go 4 wide or we have to get it to Jeremiah. They're going to do what works. And that's what you saw in the second half of that Penn State game. They're going to figure it out, and hopefully they'll be able to get some chunk plays and do enough,
I would add, it's irrelevant to this game, but I had to look it up just for like curiosity's sake. Marcus Freeman's record coaching against Ohio State. Anyone want to guess? Lifetime.
Marcus Freeman, what was it?
Marcus Freeman's lifetime record coaching against Ohio State.
Oh, I forgot. Oh, so like Purdue and Cincinnati. I don't know. 0-7.
An offer of some sort.
0-4, combined score of 136-24. Now, I will add, the first one, 56-0 with Purdue. Second one, 42-0 with Cincy. And he obviously got a hell of a lot closer.
That adds up quickly.
Notre Dame.
That adds up quickly.
I think that's both coaches' records and aggregate. It's definitely outside the Big Ten against Ohio State. So
yeah,
it was just interesting because I was thinking, he's played in 2 national title games. How many times has he played Ohio State? I do wonder if he's playing experience in this exact game, if there's any takeaways he has from that he can share with these guys.
I don't know. That's an interesting question. I feel like it came up in a previous press conference in South Bend, and like he kind of downplayed it, but like he usually he does not like to talk about himself and put himself forward that way. It's like I know they had early in the playoff, like Jordan Faison talked to the team about winning a national championship in lacrosse. Obviously you can go back to back here with football, but I don't know if Freeman's experience in this setting has much help that could be offered, because certainly there are people from Ohio State who have done it. James Laurinaitis would be one.
Did Jack Kaiser play on the 2012 team?
Yeah, I think he was a junior.
No, 88 though.
Yeah, he was a redshirt. He was redshirting in 88. So there may be some experience there too. But I just feel like, for Notre Dame, you have the Penn State win, the Georgia win, and I think one of you guys referenced the Ohio State games the last 2 years. I think that's really significant because there's just nothing about Ohio State that would scare Notre Dame at this point, other than just like they're good. They don't need to be any more than that, because like I get it. Like, Will Howard is good. Is he that much better than Kyle McCord? Is Jeremiah Smith better than Marvin Harrison Jr.?
I think that's I think Howard's better for this offense because he can run.
Yeah.
Like McCord was so stationary back there, and that's why it wasn't going to work. But
look, you have, I would say like Quinshon Judkins is better than the
Mayan Williams or Chip Trainum.
Chip Trainum, he transferred to Colorado. So they're upgraded. They did lose 2 offensive linemen.
Yeah, their offensive line I think is much worse than where it was.
They had an All-American center be lost for the year, right?
Defensively, Caleb Downs is
Caleb Downs.
Talk about Caleb Downs the way they talk about Jeremiah Smith. Just like, this guy's the best player in the country on his side of the ball. Like he's the safety version of Abdul Carter, if you will. Like, he just freelances and knows where the ball is at all times.
It's funny, and Pete, I don't know if you got to talk to Al Golden, and not that he's going to give away his secrets or people down there, but all the talk this week really has been what? Notre Dame plays man. Ohio State destroys man. What is Notre Dame going to do? And I thought, your piece with Greg McElroy was interesting, where Al Golden is not going to completely go away from man coverage. But if Al Golden is as good as we believe he is, he's not going to be just like, let's be honest, he's not going to be like Ryan Day against Michigan and just try to run through the tackles. He's going to be smart enough to realize what they need to do to put them in the best situation in this game against Ohio State. And I've been saying it all week, guys. The guy that scares the crap out of me, and maybe I'll eat these words, Jeremiah Smith's amazing. And I know he had some kind of polarizing quotes today regarding facing man-to-man and that he's going to put on a show and all of that. Emeka Egbuka, he might be a first-round pick. And, like, he was the best wide receiver in 2022 when Jackson Smith and Jigba got hurt. He was the best wide receiver last year when Marvin Harrison more or less got eliminated by Benjamin Morrison. Like, that dude is a baller. And the fact that he's their number 2, and also Carnell Tate, who Notre Dame fans wish that he was on the roster, and he had kind of a coming out party. I believe it was against Texas. So, like, that's what scares the crap out of me as a fan, is like, yeah, I know about Jeremiyah Smith, and he's unbelievable. But, like, number 2 and number 3 would be the number 1 at Notre Dame and probably, 95% of Power 5 programs?
Yeah, I would add G. Scott as a tight end who was recruited as a receiver has become a much bigger part of that offense as well. I mean, and the worst thing you could do, or the worst way you could get beat, is you spend so much time shutting those guys down, and then, like, happened against Notre Dame last year, happened against Texas and against Oregon in the playoff. Oh, there's Trey Henderson, 50-yard touchdown run. Just when you think they've abandoned the run.
Yeah. Yeah, you got to avoid that somehow. I do think, like, based on how they played Marvin Harrison Jr. the last couple of years, I don't lack for confidence that they'll be able to negate Jeremiyah Smith to a point. Now, that means you're sort of playing 9 on 10 on the rest of the field, which is a problem. So to me, it comes down to, can you zone up or man up with Egbuka, G. Scott, Carnell Tate, and figure that out, but then not give up the Travion Henderson run that you gave up when you misfit a run, like one of the gaps last year. Like, that's the play that is signal to me, like, Notre Dame is not going to win the game if they give up a huge play in the run game, because I think they will be hell-bent on not giving up an explosive pass play, certainly not one to Jeremiyah Smith. And then you just got to win at the line of scrimmage. Like, at some point, we can talk about schemes and man and zone and all that. But, like, at some point, you just got to win your one-on-one matchup. And I still think that even with the injuries to Riley Mills, Boubacar Traore, Jordan Botelho, I still think Notre Dame is good enough to win on the line of scrimmage against this Ohio State offensive line, because I just think it's pretty good. But Notre Dame has manipulated better this season than this group.
Yeah, I think I talked with Pete about this off air. Tim, I don't know if you saw Chip Kelly today, but he said, you can't double everyone. Last team we played tried to do 12 on 11. We saw what happened the rematch when we went 11 on 11 with a nice little dig at his former employer. But it's Carnell Tate's who I'd worry about the most, because, like you said, he's a number 3 on that team. He'd be number 1 on at least 90% of the teams in the country. High school teammate of Pat Coogan's, story that's been on a couple of local Chicago TV stations here this week. But I just, you got to pick your poison there. But for me, it still comes down to, Riley Leonard can't make any mistakes. This offense has to be incredibly patient. And, they're going to need to score at least in the 20s to win this game. I don't think you're going to see a 17-14 game like you did last year, despite how good both these defenses are.
Yeah, I mean, if you believe that the defense is going to get some stops, you need the offense to continue to play well. And look, Jeremiyah Love, it's going to be a challenge, but you saw what he was capable of basically on one leg, and I'm more optimistic now. I mean, the performance that he had last week is pretty incredible when you think of the reports that were coming out, how he looked in the week, and that bulky knee brace, and he still was, Pete and Matt, you probably could speak more to this than I can regarding Jeremiyah Love, but the thought of him was more of this, kind of like a Porsche, right? Like, if you have a Porsche or a Lamborghini, which I imagine are in both your garages.
Yeah.
Once it's,
one of each.
Once it's snowing outside, it doesn't really do what it's supposed to do. But he turned into, an off-roading vehicle last week.
Like a muscle car.
He was physical. I was like, oh, okay. And, I don't know ultimately what Jadarian Price is going to bring to the table, but the emergence of Aeneas Williams, the emergence of Jaden Greathouse. I know, Pete, you've been waiting for that. You've had a lot of stock in Jaden Greathouse, and it cashed in high like Bitcoin in the Penn State game. So yeah, it's I think offensively there were glimpses, and at least in that second half, you're like, okay, against a really good defense, maybe they can figure this thing out. And I think that's the biggest thing that you mentioned, Matt, and I mentioned before, is like, you just got to avoid that really bad interception. And they were able to overcome it, right? The bad interception in the second half from Riley Leonard. We're like, where are you throwing the football there? If he plays a clean game like he did against A&M and like he did against Georgia, I kind of think it's game on.
Yeah, no, I agree with you. The running back situation is interesting to me because I think, Tim, I was on your VSiN podcast this week, and I think Jeremiyah Love will play well. He's not 100%. That's just how it is. I do think Aeneas Williams has a chance to do sort of what Blue, the back from Texas, did to Ohio State, where you match him up with the linebacker, you leak him out of the backfield. That can be one of the, let's say, 4 30-yard pass plays or 3 30-yard pass plays that Notre Dame needs on Monday night. They had 3 against Penn State, just enough. They had 3 against Louisville, just enough. Although one of the 3 against Louisville was a screen pass, so it's like sort of counts. But Aeneas Williams is somebody who can create a busted coverage. I don't want to say junk big play, but not a big play in the classical sense, where you just have a receiver running open or beating man coverage, or you throw in a whole shot down the field against cover 2. But Aeneas Williams would, if we were talking about wild cards in this game, not like MVP wild cards, but guys that are a little bit more off the radar that could make the difference for Notre Dame, Aeneas Williams would probably be number 1 on my list.
That's the difference with this year's team, right? I mean, you would never go that far down the depth chart, particularly on offense, and think, well, we're playing Ohio State. Maybe our number 3 running back will factor into this game. It's just, he's the running back equivalent of Carnell Tate, if you really think about it, as far as just a like for like. I mean, it's remarkable how much he's emerged in these playoffs, and in particularly on that opening drive of the second half against Penn State. I mean, it just would have been the last play I expected, to see him get a 30-plus yard catch on a wheel route when the offense had absolutely nothing going for it. It just, especially with Jeremiyah Love in the shape he's in, it just completely opened up another hole for this offense, and it's given Riley Leonard another weapon. And, I wouldn't go so far as to say he needs all the weapons he can get, but we made it through the regular season without really wondering, outside of Jeremiyah Love, what he's working with. And it hasn't been as linear as, say, Jeremiah Smith at Ohio State. But it has been Jordan Faison 1 week in the playoff. It has been Jaden Greathouse next week. And it's been Aeneas Williams the last couple of weeks as well. And I think that is just a dynamic you cannot underestimate if you're Ohio State's defense. And one other thing, I want to make note of this. I can't imagine there's a better, this season and maybe in seasons past, but 2 programs with 2 better coordinators on both sides of the ball than Notre Dame and Ohio State, with all that head coaching experience they both bring as well. From Chip,
I was going to say, could you name Notre Dame's 3rd back in 2018 and 2020?
Tony Jones, one of them.
No, the answers are Sebo Flemister and Jafar Armstrong. So I feel like Aeneas Williams is a step above.
Jafar went to Illinois. Where'd Sebo go?
Pittsburgh.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think Jafar went to a couple places after Notre Dame. But point being, this, when we talk about this team is deeper than previous Notre Dame teams, that's a position where there's no doubt about that they
lost a 1st round pick at cornerback and arguably got better.
Yeah.
That's the craziest thing about this team. And it wasn't this is no dig on Carnell Tate, right? Carnell Tate was the best wide receiver in the country. 5-star. Leonard Moore was even a 4-star? Right.
No, he's a 3.
I mean, it's crazy. Benjamin Morrison wasn't a 5-star either.
No.
And he's going to be a 1st-round pick. So, yeah, not that we're, getting into Chad Bowden and Marcus Freeman and their evaluations and all of that. But, they deserve a ton of credit, man, because I know Notre Dame fans have been frustrated that the recruiting rankings have not been higher with Marcus Freeman and those 5 stars while they, committed and then they decommitted, whatever it may be. The depth of this roster is, we've texted plenty of times. I'm like, oh, Benjamin Morrison lost. All right, that's going to be, backbreaker, or, what was the saying we kept saying? Bridge too far. Bridge too far. And here they are. It's pretty wild.
With 2018, right? The equivalent, Julian Love goes down in the Clemson game. That game's over the first 2 plays without him.
Yeah. Like they've gone half a season, like more than half a season without Benjamin Morrison. That was 1 quarter without Julian Love. They couldn't live that way.
We didn't know how good this team was when he went down either. We had no clue how good this team was.
No, it's wild.
They're, 3 scholarship corners right now still, and they've made it this far.
Yeah, they're just kind of humming along with that at this point. Yeah,
it's impressive. And look, somehow he's underrated, even though he's a 2-time consensus All-American. But like for Xavier Watts, who in some ways better last year's performance, both statistically and just through his play, I don't think anyone at Notre Dame saw that coming. Stats are hard to come by at that position, but it just the ball hawk he's been, the leader he's been for that secondary, particularly when guy after guy went down, I just think has been borderline incredible.
I'll say this too. We've talked about people stepping up, and throughout these postseason, throughout the playoffs, you see number 3 on defense kind of flying around. You're like, oh, okay. Jalen Sneed, and I don't know what his future is going to be. I know there was thoughts that probably this would be his last season. Would he be going to the portal? It does feel like he's kind of have to be back next year. Like that dude is, I don't want to say no one's had a better playoff, Pete, but like that guy has been everywhere. And you see, why he was a 5-star coming out of high school. Like that dude's got some juice there. And when you think about KVA, I think KVA could have a really big game on Monday night too. Like the one, I don't know what you guys, but like when I think about units in this game, is Jack Sawyer, he's more of an edge. He's not really a linebacker, right?
Yeah.
So like I would say that Notre Dame probably has the edge in linebacker in this game when you look at the whole core that they have. And, I thought Jaden Ausberry, who's been really good this year, kind of had an off game against Penn State. But if KVA's there, if Sneed's playing the way that he is, Kaiser's going to be as solid as anybody. I kind of trust these linebackers to make some plays on Monday night.
Yeah, I agree.
Both sides are great tacklers. Neither of them let anything get by them. And that, it sounds obvious, but that's off in these games. That's often the difference. Winning it on the margins like that. I would probably trust Notre Dame's a little bit more at linebackers in Ohio State's defense. They usually only play 2 at a time, but I think that's what stood out the most about just how fundamentally sound both these teams are for as talented as they are on that side of the ball.
Yeah, that is, it's one of my biggest concerns for Notre Dame is just like the ability to create these explosive plays. They're not great at it anyway, but Ohio State is outstanding at stopping you from doing that. So it's sort of like you get to these, how many 30-yard pass plays can you have? They probably need 3. How many 10 to 15-yard runs can you have? I don't know what the over under is there, but I do think they're going to have to be able to get to in a position where they can take some shots and feel confident about it in the pass game to score enough. I don't know what the number is. Like what's the minimum Notre Dame score that ends with Notre Dame winning the game? Like how little could they score and still win?
24.
I was thinking 21 maybe, but that would take a lot. Ohio State had 20 against Penn State. Was that their lowest all year?
I think.
Or no,
so.
Michigan.
It was 17.
Michigan. They had 10, and then they had 21. They really had 21 against Texas, and then they get the scoop and score.
Yeah.
But they gotta have to. It's gonna be hard, man. It's gonna be.
The Texas. They left so many points on the board, and that's their fault. And again, I don't think it's the sharpest team in the world as far as consistency.
A lot of penalties.
Notre Dame will make you
self-inflicted penalties.
Absolutely.
Look, and Pete, I think you said this earlier this week. I know you've done like 53 million podcasts this week, but like Notre Dame doesn't have to play perfect but they have to play better. And I know that sounds dumb, but like if Notre Dame and Ohio State play at the same level, they're losing. I'm pretty convinced of that. They need to play better, but that's fine. They don't need an out of body experience. And I think you might have said this on my podcast, Pete. I don't know what the number is. Like if you play 10 times, how many times does Notre Dame win? Is it 1? Is it 2? Is it 3? I don't know. But it's not 0, right? It's, and you've seen this Ohio State lost twice, and they lost to Michigan, and they've looked great, but like if this season proved anything, there is no juggernaut in college football, right? I mean, case in point, 2 teams that would not have been in the 14 playoff or playing for the national championship. And if it weren't for, late steam in the betting market, they would have been a favorite in every single game heading into the championship game.
No, I'm with you. I'm with you on that. It's like you look at Notre Dame and think the 11 straight covers is interesting. Like, not that Marcus Freeman is talking about that in a press conference, but it's indicative of a team that takes care of its stuff. And so that I think is really one of the great equalizers for Notre Dame on Monday night, is like they should come in with an earned confidence that, frankly, like past Notre Dame teams didn't deserve to have. I don't know if this Notre Dame team deserved to have it before the Georgia game. But after Georgia and Penn State back-to-back, they absolutely do.
Do we want to get to predictions? I feel like we're kicking the can.
Yeah, we can do that.
Well, Tim, give us something. You're the Vegas guy. Give us a prop or something first, or something that really jumps out to you. And if you've seen any movement there that really is noteworthy.
Yeah, I'll say this. I've talked to a couple odds makers in town. They're super excited for this game. I think it's going to be incredible business. The Circa Sportsbook is going to be sold out on Monday night, which shouldn't sound crazy. But, to be honest, national championships tend to be anticlimactic, and that's not the case here. There's just a lot of juice. I was talking to another odds maker today, and he was, probably record-setting handle for this game. So they're excited for it. There was sharp money that came in on Notre Dame earlier this week, so that is worth noting. It was as high as 10.5 at some shops. It's now obviously down to 8 or so. The interesting props that I have played. I played under Bo Collins receiving yards, and I know he told reporters today that he's 100% healthy. I'm still kind of confident in that under 15.5. Because if he is ailing a little bit, doesn't it feel like, guys, he's kind of fallen to 5th on the pecking order here? Like, yeah. Jaden Greathouse,
like at that position, if you're not 100%, like you sub out. Like,
yeah,
it's not like Jeremiyah Love playing through an MCL with a brace,
right?
It's just like, okay, we'll find the next guy to put out there.
Right. If you're not 100% out there, and let's be honest, he's had certainly some ups and downs this year. So that was a prop that I did play. I mentioned the Aeneas Williams. I thought that was really interesting. It's like a 25.5, 26.5. So really high on receiving yards there. How about this prop? Riley Leonard over under on rush attempts, 14.5. And I think that number is interesting because he's eclipsed that once this year. But it was the Penn State game.
Yeah, it will be twice by the end of Monday night.
Yeah, so it was like the odds makers are no dummies, right? Like he's averaged well under that, but knowing the importance, and also worth noting, if anyone is in a state, there's a lot of states that don't have access to player props in college. Sacks count against your rushing yards, as well as their attempts, though. So if he's sacked, that is a rushing attempt. So it's kind of an interesting one there. And then a lot of people bet this that I know. Notre Dame's first drive to end in a punt is like minus 140. So a lot of people think that Notre Dame will not score on their opening drive and will punt it away. And then, for me, I mentioned it. Emeka Egbuka, I played over on his, I think his receiving prop was 57.5. I played over that, over 4.5 receptions. I think Jeremiah Smith, is like around 80. I think that's a little too high. I didn't play under, but I do think it could be Tate or Egbuka who is going to have a big play. And that's the thing too, right? We know it's coming. And we saw it last year. As good as Notre Dame played, you had the Travion Henderson big touchdown run. They're going to have an explosive play or two. I think ultimately it's just, how many can you limit Ohio State to? And can you get Will Howard to turn the ball over?
All right. Well, do you have a prediction on top of that?
All right. So I bet under in the first half. So I think it'll be a low scoring first half.
What was that number?
23.5 is what I bet under. It was 3-0 last year, worth noting.
Yeah.
I don't know, man. I've gone back and forth on this, and I'm usually not the homer. My last prediction on this show was pretty decent. I think I said 26-17. I did bad math, and it was 27-17 in the Indiana game. I'm going to go homer, man. I'm just going to do it.
You got the rally cap on.
21 Notre Dame.
23-21?
Mitch Jeter. Money Mitch, who I said my prediction against Indiana, I said he would make a field goal and miss an extra point, and Matt was like, well, that would be 27. I was like, oh, damn it, Matt. But I think Money Mitch and his dad very calmly with his iPhone, Notre Dame hits a game-winning field goal. I don't know. I'm going full fanboy. I really think they're going to have a hard time scoring, but party like it's 1988, man. Let's do it. 23-21 Notre Dame. Do I really believe that? Not really, but I'm going to make that my prediction. Notre Dame 23-21.
Oh, you fit right in Vegas, huh? At the very least, you think they'll cover again.
Yeah.
Pete?
I also am going with Notre Dame 21-20. I think that they're gonna have to play outstanding defensively. I think the odds are in their favor that way. I'm more concerned about them scoring 21 than them holding Ohio State to 20. But to get to 21, we're talking about the 1.5 holy crap plays that they make. It could be a game that's 14-17, 17-14 in the third quarter, early fourth. They're down, they score a touchdown, give up a field goal, and win 21-20. Again, like when I was filling out my prediction for The Athletic, I think we had about 20 staff writers, and I looked at the first 14, they're all Ohio State. And to Tim's point, like, this is not a game where if you played it 14 times, Ohio State would win all 14. So I think that kind of prompted me or moved me to pick Notre Dame. But that's where I settled. 21-20 Notre Dame. I'm not sure what it's going to look like or feel like to write about afterwards. But it would be one hell of a scene. So I go Notre Dame 21-20 on Monday night to beat Ohio State.
I think this is the first game where I haven't written down like my prediction number, how it's going to get there, blah, blah, blah. This one, I wouldn't say I'm winging it, but I could see this going a million different ways. But I will take the approach you took, which is if the three of us picked a clean sweep of Notre Dame on this podcast, that'd be the kiss.
Yeah, that would make any sense.
And we owe it a lot more to our listeners. I owe it. You don't want me picking your team, believe me.
I'll just say this before you give your prediction, Matt. I don't know. I mean, I predicted on my podcast that Georgia would win. I bet Georgia. I was wrong. It's the happiest I've been losing money in my life. The Penn State game, I had the under, and I was also happy losing money there because they probably wouldn't have won the game if not for it going over, right? So I've just kind of had a bad read on Notre Dame. And, the more and more I hear people talk about this game, and, I'll say this. Like prior to the Clemson ACC championship game in 2020, I sat on my couch. I'm like, Notre Dame's gonna get their ass kicked, and they did. Could Notre Dame get their ass kicked on Monday? Yeah, it's possible.
If there's a team in the country that could do it, it would be Ohio State. This Ohio State team at their best.
They were up 34-0 on Oregon.
Right.
Like they have the capabilities of kicking Notre Dame's ass. Notre Dame, I don't think can win this by double digits. I don't think that's in the cards, but I just have come around to like everywhere, every piece of content I consume, it's how is Notre Dame going to score? And I tend to agree with it. It's going to be a challenge, but I don't know, man. There's something about this team. And I know that's stupid and maybe that's the fanboy in me, but like there is something about this team, man. Isn't there? Like Ohio State's the better football team. They're rightfully a touchdown plus favorite, but I don't know. There's something about this damn team. And yeah, that's why I'm just gonna go homer and see if they can pull it off.
You can't. You're unwilling to fall out of love with this team if you're a Notre Dame fan.
Can't quit. Well,
yeah. Look, you want them to keep playing past Monday night.
Well, they're playing on they're playing with house money, man. Like this season, I know preseason. What was the talk? And you guys talked about on this podcast, right?
Win a playoff game or two.
What's a successful season?
Yeah.
Win a playoff game or two playoff games, right? Because you guys brought up the point, like, well, what if they beat Boise State or whoever? Well, you beat Indiana. Okay, it's a Big Ten team, but you beat the SEC champ, you beat the Big Ten runner-up, and you beat Indiana with who had one loss. Like, that's a season, man. Like, so house money, man. Let's roll.
I hate the house money expression because I almost think it cheapens like their very real opportunity to win this game. I'm picking Ohio State. I could not have all three of us pick Notre Dame. Like it just would the bad juju going their way after that would be terrible. I'll go Ohio State 27-17. I just think they're a better team. I almost look at it like I've looked at this 12-team playoff a lot like I've looked at March Madness, which is upsets do happen. But usually when like the really good teams and blue bloods make it to the Final Four or the championship, it's like, well, they made it this far without screwing up. They're not going to screw up now. Ohio State's better. Notre Dame certainly has a chance. I would not be shocked at all if they pulled it off. But I do think the line's as big as it is for a reason. I have a hard time seeing Notre Dame putting together another Orange Bowl second half over 4 quarters in this game. 27-17 is what I'm going with, Ohio State.
I think that's very logical. I'm laughing right now because I do have the Washington Commander game on, and Sam Hartman is sitting next to Jaden Daniels as the franchise in Washington is headed to their first NFC championship since the 1991 season. So
they're calling it with 2 minutes left after they didn't go for it on 4th down.
I think when they beat the Lions, if I'm not mistaken.
When they beat the Lions, yes. The then Redskins won 41-10 over the Lions in the NFC Championship game. So
I assume they covered that one, Tim.
I'm going to be pretty confident. And then I think they were an underdog to the Bills. So Sam Hartman headed to the NFC Championship game, barring craziness here in the final minute and a half. So just like we all predicted,
playing
right?
Longer than this year's Notre Dame team, which has played the longest season in college football history.
Just like we all predicted, we knew that quarterback for Notre Dame would be a rookie in the NFC Championship. We knew it.
Proof that upsets can happen.
Sam Hart, former Notre Dame quarterback, and a former Mike Denbrock protege together making up that quarterback room.
Yeah. All right. Well, that's it for our national championship game preview episode of The Independent. Matt and I will be back. I hesitate to say late Monday night because it's probably more like early Tuesday morning.
If Notre Dame wins, I'm coming on.
Okay, yeah. We'll get you the link, Tim.
Well, don't you have a show Monday night?
I have a show. By the way, if you guys want to be entertained on Monday night, I will be working on air during the game. The Notre Dame super fan that has been to 37 games in my life, flew a red eye to go to the Orange Bowl. I will be working during maybe the first national championship in 35 years. So, check that out. I'll be on from 7 to 11 Eastern on VSiN. We're on Sirius XM channel 158. So if you want to turn down the audio of Kirk and Chris Fowler and listen to me die while Notre Dame is playing, could be enjoyable. If you want to,
we might have to have you on whether they win or lose just to recap your night.
Oh yeah, and my partner Matt Humans has been talking about this for like a week and a half, just like this is gonna be the greatest thing ever. I'm like, yeah, it's gonna be fun. It's gonna be a blast. So We have an app, by the way, the VSiN Watch app. It's free, so you can go get the VSiN Watch app, and you can listen to me painfully take in, or maybe joyfully take this one in. I don't know. I mean,
hey, they're listening to you. Following your
both.
NFL team right now on the Independent.
I'm just like I'm not kidding when I say this. You know, I as you guys can tell from text message that I've sent you, I'm usually pretty pessimistic. I've had like a weird calm this week, man. Like I don't know if other Notre Dame fans are like this, but it's like, I don't know. They just beat Penn State and beat Georgia and won their first major bowl game in over 3 decades. Like, sweet. Let's do it. Why not?
Why not? Maybe they'll be the next obvious shirt
after
they win the national title on Monday.
Yeah, I mean,
Tim, see, we're literally watching you. We're watching you watch the Commanders right now. I don't think it's nearly as intense for you right now as it will be Monday night, but
no, this is nothing. This is nothing compared to what Monday night will be like.
It's going to be a fun one.
I may be on campus Monday night. If anyone's listening, throwing a cool party or doing something cool for the game, let me know. I'd like to check out the scene as Notre Dame goes for another national championship. But feels weird to say that. Feels fun to say that because we're going to be recording after that game, and it's either going to be the biggest drunken celebration among our listeners ever, or the biggest therapy session we've ever collectively had as well. But stuff will go down either way.
It will be a show, and we will be with you live whatever hour we hit record. It will be a live show, so we can get all your comments and reactions in. So until then, he's Matt, I'm Pete, he's Tim. This has been the latest episode of The Independent. We will talk to you Monday night /Tuesday morning after Notre Dame, Ohio State.